This is the Internet Court of Truth. Internet Court of Truth is really for people who believe something is true or they believe something is a lie and they wonder what other people think. In this particular case, I had written a poem back in 1993 at the beginning of the internet. I'm going to give a little bit of history of the poem, but I'm going to try that the last stanza of the poem is true. And I'm going to see what other people think. This is literally probably the first time I've ever done this to see what other people think of it. Although back in the 90s, my nickname among people who were starting the internet was the Dragon. And it was because of this poem. In the computer science community, I was known for this thing. So I'm just going to read the poem because it's so short. It's World Wide Web's November the 30th, 93. I never thought I would see the day when books looked superfluous. I saw the day before yesterday the world. I leapt about from Japan to here, to Australia, to Finland, to Italy, like it was nothing. And by the way, that little stanza is absolutely true. I was leaping from, believe it or not, high school to high school in Australia, Finland, and Italy. It was stunning. They were just getting, or college, whatever they were, but they were people in schools. And they were putting up their stuff on the internet, their home pages. And I got deep into people, what they were thinking and doing, what they wanted and thought I might like. This is what a book was supposed to be, but this was much better. I made up the plot and I discovered the real story. All right there, right then, and like the world, it would never repeat again. Oh, I really would like to have books with their tree paper go the way of the dinosaur. This is nearly it. It's the place to really learn. Will the internet become the dragon, the house dragon, the oldest dragon from China, the dragon of peace holding the pearl of everlasting life? In China, there is such a thing as a house dragon. House dragons are on a table in a house. They're your protector. So dragons are not seen as these evil things. They are seen as your protector. It's the dragon of peace holding the pearl of everlasting life. And sometime later, I actually found a house dragon that was from China, where they had replaced the ion ball. But this is just another house dragon. And I bought it and put it together with the poem. It's in my living room. The question is, was I right that the internet has become the dragon, the house dragon, the dragon of peace holding the pearl of everlasting life? And I believe it has, but I'll argue that there's some differences here and there. One of the meetings I'd had at CMU prior to the 93 was a meeting with Steve Jobs, and this is in my privacy book. And I'll read this. I was in a casual meeting with Steve Jobs in Raj Reddy's office with one or two others at Carnegie Mellon University. Raj was my boss. He's the head of the Robotics Institute. I was there because Raj gracefully invited me. Everybody besides me was a famous powerhouse. There were about two other really famous people who neither names I can remember right now. We were talking about whether the internet would ever take over the consumer world. This was in 91, 2 years before my poem. We brought up email as possibly replacing paper mail. We had all used email in our universities and companies for many years. The internet already allowed email across different networks. But this other giant of technology from Boston, whose name I will not mention, said, the American people are too stupid to ever understand how to use email. He said, no, email will never take off. I quietly thought he was a fool, but Steve immediately came in while I was stunned at this garbage came out of this guy's mouth. Steve nailed it out loud. He said, when the American people understand store and forward, watch out. That's what email is, and that's what the web is. He knew that people were not stupid if they see something and they like it. Store and forward is a technology with a plain social contract for improving the trading secrets. They go from appearing to be quite stupid by asking questions like, why should I do that? Or what makes you think this could ever happen? Like that guy did, to adopting the socio-technical impossibility of the web and email with miraculous speed. Of course, Steve was right. I'll never forget that when he said, the American people understand store and forward, watch out. And you'll see him later, this is from Wikipedia, of him holding up his internet device. There it is. And I want to, one other thing. This is another one of my little Medium articles, and I won't get into the particular topic of it. But I did find this from April 18, 1963, from a scrap of newspaper that I found somewhere. And there you go. You'll be able to carry a phone in your pocket in the future. And there she is with a flip phone in 1963. So it really took the internet, not the phone. That's my argument. So I believe this is the truth. And I'll give you arguments about some potential counter arguments to this. But I believe it's essentially true that the world has changed because of the internet. And and the devices that we have today are all internet enabled for a reason, so forth and so on. Is it the whole truth? It hasn't just caused peace and everlasting life. It's caused some other things too. Okay. But one of the things it caused was peace and everlasting life on a global scale that never existed before this. Is it nothing but the truth? I said yes. I could have said no, probably too. But what's the deceit? As with most things that you think are the truth, I don't think there's any deceit here. Was the seed of truth intended? I said the truth is intended. What's the motivation behind the truth or lie? It's just to be informative. What's your social acceptability? I found it just completely acceptable. What label would improve the social acceptability of the lie? I basically said no label was needed. The thing stands on its own. I've been good with it. One of the things that I had known about this dragon of peace holding the pearl of everlasting life for a couple of years before I wrote that poem. I'd found it in a book of mythology. And they matter-of-factly just showed the dragon from thousands of years ago and called it exactly that. And said it's popular in China today and so forth and so on, and it is. I was given the opportunity to go to give a talk at the Taipei National Library of Taiwan in 1997. And there I am in the middle. We all got big, or actually I was the keynote speaker, so I guess I got the big flowers. And I read everybody the poem. I put it up on the screen and read the poem. And I said, am I telling the truth about the dragon of peace and the pearl of everlasting life? And everybody said, yes. And there was the audience that was sitting there going, yep, you got it right. I was not making this up. One of the people said, you didn't have to call it the dragon of peace. You could have called it the dragon of heaven. And the pearl had some variant meanings, but they were all everlasting life. They were all and happiness. And so the Chinese have had this whole concept for a long time. Now I'm going to go over the jurors. For each juror, can you summarize your verdict in 20 to 30 seconds? And I'd love to hear what y'all have to say. I have no idea what you think of this. I've had people tell me about it a little bit, but I've never asked people anything about it. So this will be the first time, believe it or not. Juror one.
That would be me, Bob. How are you doing?
Fine.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Whenever I first seen the title and it said World Wide Web claim, I'm like, oh man, what is this here? Because I remember back whenever we were transitioning from just basically no internet into the age of internet. And it was wow. It was a wow factor to see from where it went from there to now. And I can't say that it should be called peace. The internet should be called peace or heaven at times because it can cause so much mental anguish and so much mental instability if you don't put your devices down and step away. I've seen it happen and it's been known to be true, but I do feel like there is truth behind some of it being peace and some of it being heaven because it is a way for people to keep in contact with their loved ones when they live far away. For some who knows how to control their time and their activity on the internet, it can be very productive and very helpful. So I had to agree with you on the things that you had put.
Yeah, what I'm looking at in terms of the Dragon of Peace, I'm really thinking in terms of all the countries in the world and the penetration. When the internet's allowed to penetrate across national boundaries, it tends to have really good effects because people from different countries makes it harder to make up that the people in the other country are evil, unless, of course, the countries block the access, which is what they do now, and did it in the Soviet Union, and numbers of countries do it. China does it, but China has an interesting policy, which I don't want to go into because it'll take me 30 minutes. They have very intentionally created basically Chinese copies of things but following the rules of the American things they found that they liked. And they do wall things off, but they don't completely wall things off. You don't go to jail for looking at an American website in China. My main argument for this is that it's really on an international basis, it's reduced the likelihood of war, although we're staring it into the face right now.
I was just going to say, if our countries each could be ran by I guess you could say a meditated Zen computer to control all of the world, we might finally find true peace.
Somebody will get a hold of that computer. So control has to be as distributed as possible, which is what the internet gave. Anybody could set up something on the
website.
And that.
Oh yeah, George, is me. I find it's very charming. It's the poem. I love when scientists reveal their soul in this way. I think it's very interesting and very energizing and inspirational. But the dragon, though, as I understand it, there's a whole lot around it, the mythology. The dragon is, yes, it's a guardian of peace and everlasting life. But when roused when invoked to correct errors, it causes absolute chaos.
That's right.
There's such a fallout, everybody gets affected. Right. And that's what the internet is. Everybody is affected by it. And there is peace when people find their groups, their TikTok pages, their YouTube people, they find comfort that way. So that's a kind of the peace that's being spread. But at the same time, that there's chaos and damage and all sorts of stuff. And I worry we're in a huge, great mix of stuff, but because it's so ill-disciplined, there's going to be no real creative output from the internet now. Is what the way I feel.
Yeah. I think that we'll see it in kids growing up. They're not maybe a way you might be thinking, but becoming educated.
Mhm.
It was because in a lot of places around the world, the only way kids can get educated is off the internet if they have
Right.
access.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm a real supporter of free internet, which I failed on miserably in the United States. I tried to make it all free. I really fought for it to be made free, to make it just a utility, a standard utility that everybody has. And of course, they've done that in Japan. The internet is just a utility. So in some countries they've done it, but the United States just couldn't bring themselves to it. So juror 3.
Hey, that's me. So
Hey.
when I looked up like the idea of the dragon, it seemed to be more benevolent. And so I'm going with Andrew saying the internet's neither malevolent or benevolent. It's a tool like the gun. And so it's
Yeah.
just how it's used. Another part of it is I think I was totally shocked when you said something about getting rid of printed books. I think printed books are so important, especially because of all the digital stuff going on. And I don't see everlasting life when everything's memory hold. So there's my summary of everything.
So the book thing is really interesting to me because we started something called the Million Book Project at CMU. This was like in 95 to digitize all the books in the world. We actually digitized the first 10 million books. We had Spain, India, the United States. I'm trying to remember.
And that was before the Internet
Taiwan.
Archive? That was before the Internet Archive.
Is that
Yeah,
the
that was
Gutenberg?
before the internet. That's how I got to know Brewster
Oh.
because we had already digitized 1 million books by the time he showed up. And he did a better job of it than we did. We were trying to get the libraries to do it, that's like a suicide mission. How best would you like to be killed by a
Yeah.
librarian? Tell them you're going to digitize the books.
But by Dewey number, yeah.
Juror 4.
That's me. I think it connects the world like never before. It opens up the world to everyone. Like you were talking, the countries now, we can communicate easily with someone in South Africa like we're doing. And I think it levels the playing field for people that otherwise wouldn't have access to the knowledge or to the information. And I got Groke's opinion, and this isn't verbatim, but it basically said it's a repository bank for all of our digital stuff.
So it is what Stephen called it, a store and forward device. I wish I could remember. I don't really wish I could remember this other guy's name, but he was from Boston. He was on the phone from Boston, and he's very famous. And he was a total idiot to say the American people are too stupid to not ever be able to use email or anything like it. This was before any of that stuff had taken off. And so we were guessing, but I didn't believe this guy. I actually couldn't believe it. It really, and Steve clearly became very philosophic very quickly.
Well, they were telling us back in the early 80s, I guess, when the internet had just came out, that we would have, like, eventually our offices were all going to be paperless, that it would all be digital. And we're like, no, we got to have a hard copy. We got to have a hard copy, which we do need a hard copy because I'm an old bean counter. If the system goes down, we need a hard copy. A system of freight.
I agree with that. Yeah, I remember that too back in the early 80s when they were saying that, and it never quite got there. It didn't get there until the internet got there, and then it.
Yeah. But to see it evolve from the 80s on and hearing you talk about your own experience, that's just amazing history that should be documented because all of us looking back on it, we're just so lucky.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It is amazing.
So juror 5.
Hello, everybody. I agree with everything that everybody said so far. and I loved your poem. And I think the internet's the most important invention since the wheel. It's just so wonderful. And the last thing I want to say is that what label would improve the social acceptability, the truth or lie? I'd put beware of dragons because just came to my mind. It's wonderful.
I think I forgot who it was who said this, but it was George too, I guess. Said that the dragon is a house dragon in China, but it is absolutely true. The dragon is there to take care of anything that threatens your household in a serious way. You're a friendly dragon as long as he's your house dragon, but don't cross somebody else's house dragon.
That's right.
Juror 6.
Hi, Bob. Yeah, I think when I read your poem, it really, certain things that you said, over 30 years ago. I was a teenager doing engineering, and I thought, what's this internet thing? You can only read stuff. And boy, was I wrong. It changed the world. A lot of people here, a lot of the other jurors have said the same thing. I think it's done to the world what in multiples, magnitude of what electricity did in the 19th century. So it's definitely made the world a smaller place. We'd never be able to do this if the internet wasn't around.
One of the courses I taught over at CMU in the 90s was the law of the internet. And what it was the IP protocols, the protocols. So IP and TCP and that stuff.
Yes.
Those are the only laws. The laws are this is what can be communicated.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is how information,
but it's not what you communicate. Okay. There's no restriction on what you communicate. And in fact, the guy Postal, I don't know if you know who he is. Have you ever heard of him?
No, I'll Google him.
Yeah, so he wrote most of the early, what are called RFCs, requests for comments, which were the laws for the internet. One of the things that we wanted him to do that he refused to do was put security into the internet so that you would know who was sending something and where it was going to for security reasons. And he refused. You don't know who he was. He was the last guy that would ever refuse anything. This was the only thing I'd ever heard him refuse. Every other idea he took in and he massaged it and made it into a protocol and so forth and so on. But if you want to talk about who the engineer was, who's the real father of the internet, it's Postal. He was at the University of San Diego, University of Southern California, San Diego, I think. I think that's where he was. I know he was in Southern California.
His first name? I'm just busy.
I want to say, I can't remember. Let me try to get his first name. I'll recognize it, I'm pretty sure.
I'm getting stuff about post office protocol, version 3.
So there it is, RFC 1939. This is one of the RFCs. This was written by Myers and Rose. Myers, I knew, he was at Carnegie Mellon. These are the commands for that particular, it was for running a post office. And let me see if the simple mail transfer protocol is Postal. So he's the guy who wrote the protocol for all email.
T-E-R.
Jonathan.
Okay.
I wanted to say John, but it's Jonathan Postal. And it's Postal. His name was spelled Postel.
Okay, now, that's come up now.
Okay.
Wikipedia.
That's my fault. I don't actually know what's happened to him, but you can see Appendix A, TCP, SMPT.
This was in 1982.
Yeah.
This is okay.
University of Information Sciences Institute, University of Southern California. So I don't know if y'all know where that is, but that's right in the San Diego, the University of Southern California in the San Diego area. That's the guy. And if you ever want to read what the internet really is, here you go. And it's all in nice English and stuff like that.
I think it's quite sad that he passed away almost 30 years ago as well.
Yeah.
1990.
Yeah, he wasn't a young guy at the time. So he wasn't old, but he wasn't. Yeah. But he was a very pleasant person. He was very good at this. He kept everything very simple, which is one of the reasons this all took off. Am I on 07? To go to 07? Did I skip 6 or anything?
No, I was 6, Bob. Thanks.
Okay, 7.
I would say that referring to the internet as a dragon is a good poetic interpretation of the internet's like its nature and its role per se in the world. Personally, I can't say that the internet is either or. It has a balance, and whether it's perfect or not is not it's not up to me to decide. But I personally think that you should be cautious when you navigate through the web because it is full of ups and downs. I myself haven't had any bad experiences, but I do know a few people personally that have, and all I can say is just be cautious basically. But I did appreciate the like I said, the poetic interpretation, Bob.
Thanks. So, juror 8.
I basically agreed with everything that everyone said so far. I also really love the poem as well. From my side, basically, I just said that the internet isn't purely good or bad. It's a tool and its impact depends on how it's used and what systems surround it. So, yeah, if you use the internet correctly, it can be beneficial to you. It gives you easy access to information, it helps you connect with people across the globe, and it also allows people to have creativity and express themselves. Yeah, I also do think that it can be used negatively as well. It hasn't happened to me, but it definitely has happened a lot. So, yeah, it's just basically my take.
Yeah. So I didn't have anybody condemn me. This makes me feel better.
This is a pretty good one here this time, Bob.
Okay, good. So next week we're gonna dive back into lies again, and the title of the thing is something to the effect of "Who humiliates you?"
Oh my.
So consider this a light
start
one.
Where did you come up with that one?
You'll find out next week.
It could be your brain talking to yourself, humiliating yourself.
No, it was actually a New York
Self-talk.
Times or a Wall Street Journal article. I can't remember which of the two, but it was a short article by a famous guy.
So what the title is going to be Who Humiliates You?
Is it
Yeah,
who?
I can't remember the whole thing right now, but I just read the title off to see, and I remember that it has to do with an article a short article that I read in the New York Times or something caused me to write that article. But it is on lies. But you can imagine that I regard humiliation as a lie always. Okay.
So are we
Okay,
going to do longer summaries next week with personal like stories on that one, or are we just going to do the same?
It'll be basically the same thing, but if you can do a short version, you do a short version of a personal story, they're always welcome.
So where are you beginning to opening up our souls?
I can't imagine anybody growing up as a human being and not being humiliated at least once by somebody.
And I humiliate myself every day.
Okay.
That's why I'm saying. Hey, y'all, I'm going to tell you right now, here's where the real Bob's going to come out on us. He's the lab rats right here. Just joking.
Okay, so,
It's going to psychoanalyze us all.
no, it's actually an
I'm looking
interesting,
forward to that.
it's an interesting computational problem. You just
That's
I
what
will tell you
thought.
next week. Neurons work. Okay. Okay, I'll
Bye, Bob.
bye.
Bye, y'all.
See ya. Thanks.